Mm-hmm.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Your Vote Matters Town Hall, the what, why, and how of voting in 2020 census. This is a Lucas Live Media special event. I'm excited to be here with you guys today. Welcome, welcome, welcome into the broadcast. As you guys join us, please do share this broadcast. If you're watching us on Facebook, especially, make sure you share it to your page as a post. Share to post. It'll give you the option right there. It'll also give you the option to share it as a watch party. But if you share it as a watch party, that's going to put people in a separate room and isolate them from the discussion. They will see the broadcast, but it will put them in a separate room, so we won't be able to see their comments and pull their comments in. So as you guys come in, also feel free to say hello in the comments. That's how we know you're here. If you don't say anything in the comments, you're welcome. We see you. We're glad you're here. We just don't know you're here. So we love it when you make a comment. If you say hello, if you guys have questions, there'll be Q&A at the end. And we're really excited about what's going to happen here tonight. We have some amazing, amazing panelists tonight who are going to really inspire you, educate you, teach you something important tonight. So I'm excited to be your host. However, I will not be your moderator. Okay, there's going to be two amazing moderators who are really going to share with you guys and let you guys know what you need to know about tonight's broadcast. So I'm excited to bring them on here in just a minute. Hello, I see all you guys jumping in. Hello, hello, hello. We're excited to have you. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the broadcast. Welcome to the show. Again, I'm your host, Lucas Tyndale. I will be a panelist. In just a moment, I'm going to fade to the back and become a panelist to share information with you guys. So I look forward to doing that. But first, let me welcome our two moderators. First, we have from the Stark County Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Inc., Miss Krista Allison, and from the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Kappa Tau Chapter, we have Mr. Tamir Davenport. They are going to take over from here. You guys will see me back here momentarily, but in a different capacity. So don't worry, I'm still here. I'm still around as I move things around on my computer screen. I'll be here, but they will be guiding us through this today. In light of recent events and what we know what went on with the killing of Breonna Taylor today, we also want to take a moment to be mindful of that and the hurt and the pain that is going out across this country. But tonight is a night where we can talk about solutions. We can all continue to talk about the problems and what's going on and what's going wrong. Or we can take action by voting, by completing our census, and by learning from the things you're going to learn tonight. So we welcome you guys again. Share this broadcast. Go get your kids. Go get your friends. Share it onto your big screen at your house from your phones and your tablets, and invite people into this conversation. Without any further ado, let me bring on our wonderful panelists. Welcome to the broadcast.
Thank, thank you, Lucas. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here today.
Good evening, everyone. Krista, this is like old times. You and I have an opportunity to work together again. It seems like Family Fun Day that we used to put together in the Canton City School District. I'm looking forward to tonight. We have a great panel, and it's just one of those things, Krista, where tonight's purpose and function is going to be on community awareness, perspective to our different communities, to educate, to empower our listeners, to recognize the power of their voice as a whole, and also for the 2020 census. Both of our organizations have a long-standing history, over a century, of community engagement, social action, support, and partnership. Tonight, Kristen, we're going to have two parts of the discussion. The first one is going to deal with your count matter. But before we do that, Kristen, please talk about the rules of engagement and how this whole thing is going to operate tonight.
Thank you, Tamir. And again, welcome everyone to this exciting virtual town hall. We're so excited about this evening. We do have a couple of guidelines and expectations. And as Lucas indicated at the very beginning, we will be taking questions and answers toward the end. But you'll notice that you have a chat. In the chat feature, please type in your questions, type in your comments. We're also going to be typing in some questions and comments as well. And you're going to see some things listed in the chat that are called key takeaways. And the importance of the key takeaways is that we're going to be highlighting some of the things that our panelists will be talking about this evening. Again, we are so excited to have all of you join us, and we're pleased to be bringing such an important and timely topic this evening to all of you. As Lucas said, we encourage you to share this with your family, your friends, to others throughout the community. Thank you.
So let's get into it. We're going to introduce our first panel dealing with the 2020 census. We have with us tonight Liz Hibbs. She's an educator, community activist, and she's working to promote the 2020 census from an informational standpoint. We have Jamie Johnson, who is with the United States Census Bureau, and my tag team partner tonight, Krista L. Allison from DST. She is the social action chair for the Starr County Alumni chapter. So we want to welcome all our panelists at this time, and we see that they're up on the screen. So great, Krista. Since we're kind of kicking off with the census, who better to start with than you? Kind of give us some things in reference to the census before we dive into this particular topic tonight.
Sure, Tamir. As you can see, we're going to be putting up some slides. And so this first slide that you're going to see in a few minutes is really going to talk about the census itself. We know that the census is done every 10 years. And one of the things that we really want to impress upon folks is that the census is actually due September 30th. That's right. Next week, the census is due. It came pretty fast. But the thing is that due to changes that were happening at a federal level, the census is now due on September 30th. And so that's why we're having this conversation tonight, because we want to make sure that everyone knows that this deadline is approaching us soon. We also want everyone to know that if they have not completed their census, they need to do so immediately. Every vote, every counts. So you're going to see here the deadline is September 30th, and that it is not too late. It is not too late to complete your census. So again, we're going to be talking about this a little bit more this evening, but September 30th is the date. Please pull out your phone, mark it on your phone, send a ton of text messages to folks saying September 30th is that date, but that is our key date, and we want to hit that as a state.
So, Krista, we're going to stay in that same vein with you. Tell us what the census actually supports so our audience has an opportunity to see it.
Sure, thank you. And we have another slide that we're going to show everyone, because sometimes when we talk about the census, it's so big. And sometimes we hear folks say, well, my count, that's not going to matter. Me completing the census, I don't need to do that. I've done my taxes, or they don't really need to hear from me. But the reality is that our census, it shapes not only our future, but it shapes our community. In this slide that you're getting ready to see, you're going to see all the different things that the census and does. So I'm just going to start in that top corner in terms of budget planning at all levels of government within not only our state of Ohio, but at our local level. When we talk about this piece with our schools and how our schools are districted and how our schools are funded by way of school lunches, the census supports that effort. Planning for hospitals and our nursing homes, our overall health services that we provide, direct funding and services for individuals that are living in poverty, and how do we support them, as well as for developing programs for families. It's also designed for families who are in elderly facilities and people with disabilities. We know that it's important to have those facilities that are designed for individuals that need that support. We also know that the census supports and attracting new businesses. This is so huge by way of the businesses that come into our community. And we know that having those businesses supports our jobs, it supports our infrastructure, it supports our investment planning. So the census supports all of these various areas. In addition to that, future housing, but more importantly, and this is the one I want to say for last, is the apportioning of seats, or the reapportioning of seats in the U.S. House of Representatives. When we are casting our census and completing our census, we're saying this is how many people we have in our state. And that really equates to our representation at a federal level. And again, this is going to link directly to our conversation later on about the 2020 election. and how our voice matters. But it's really important that we complete that census because we want everyone to know, we want our federal government to know that we want that representation at a federal level. So those are just 10 top ways that the census affects all of us. So when we're thinking that it doesn't affect us, it does. We are all in it together. Your census counts. Thank you, Tamir.
You, Krista. Now that we have the education component out of the way, you've explained the 10 reasons. Now we're going to bring in Jamie and Liz to kind of share some stats, statistics in reference to Canton, Massillon, Alliance, the whole of Stark County. And then I know because we have some other callers on the line, we want you guys to share some statistics from the state of Ohio. So Liz, I'll turn it over to you first.
So I'm going to start with some positive news. When we're looking at the state of Ohio in 2020 as compared to 2010, Ohio as a state is currently up 1.1% from where we were 10 years ago for self-reporting on the census. So for 2020, the state of Ohio is currently at 70.1%. And in 2010, the self-reporting was at 69%. So we know there's still more work to do, but that's a positive. Stark County specifically is up 1.4% as of today. And in 2020, we are currently at 74.7%. And in 2010, Stark County was at 73.3%. So both Stark County and Ohio overall are up for self-reporting. Now, Canton is down 4.3% as compared to 2010. Canton currently has a self-reporting rate of 60.6% as compared to 64.9% in 2010. Massillon is down by 0.9% in 2020. They are at 73.1%, and in 2010 they had 74%. And then Alliance is down by 2.2% as compared to 2010. Alliance is currently at 67.7%, and in 2010 they were at self-reporting of 69.9%. The good news is we still have time, but we need your help.
Thank you, Liz. Jamie, is there something you want to add? And I know that you've been out on the road so much, you're losing your voice. We really appreciate you sticking it out with us tonight, Jamie.
Yes, thank you. And what I also want to point out is that the our response rate is still like far from the final count from 2010. But let me give you these numbers. Alliance had a 67.7% self-response rate. In 2010, the total response was 80%. In Canton, it was 60.6%. Now, in 2010, it was 74%. In Louisville, it was 78.7. In 2010, it was 83%. Massillon is 73.1, but in 2010 it was 81%, and in North Canton it was 81.4%, and in 2010 it was 84%. So what that says is we're low in the self-response count. We're over our 2010 self-response, but we have enumerators and people coming knocking on the doors. You still have time. We still have till September 30th, and you count, everybody count. Make sure you count all persons residing in your household, okay? Make sure everybody counts because you are the ones that shape your future for the next 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Jamie. Krista, from a statistical standpoint, I know we've had a lot of conversations. Do you want to add one more component here before we move to the next question?
I think it's interesting when we look at the numbers from the census that Liz and both Jamie pointed out. And what is something that we just want everyone to understand is that we are still low. We are still undercount, as they say. So when we think about these numbers, and I know there was a lot of numbers that you heard, we are undercount, everyone. The reality is if we turn in those numbers as an undercount, that is less funding that comes to our state. That is less funding that comes to our city. That's less funding that comes to our county. So those 10 things that we talked about that I shared earlier, the things with respect to our schools, our roads, our housing, our supports that we need for families, we're going to receive less money if we are undercount. And if we receive less money, that's going to affect all of us. So that's why when you see those comments about the census, your future, our community, our family, our community, This is all of us, everyone. It's not each person for themselves. We cannot be undercount for this census, because if we are, this will affect us for the next 10 years.
Over
It's not going, and longer than that. It's not just even going to affect our generation. This is going to affect the next generation. So what we do now, our completion of the census, will help our next generation, our babies. So I think I just want to make sure, Tamir, that we impress upon that on everyone. And Liz and Jamie, please feel free to comment.
Yes, we have over $675 billion with a B annually that's allocated per your population. There are no do-overs after September 30th. There are no do-overs until next 2030. Okay, so it is vital. Everyone needs to get counted. All persons residing in the United States, District of Columbia, and Puerto Rico, count yourself if you're in the United States. We need you all. We need you to shape your future. This is your future.
Thank you, James.
So I want to point out as well something that I found interesting through my work in the census is that every single person who participates, for one person, approximately $1,814 goes to your community without taking a dime from your pocket, just for participating in the census. So a family of four can theoretically give $7,256 to their community without taking a dime from their pocket, just by participating in the census. You do not need to be a citizen, and your information does not get shared. In fact, it is completely confidential. They don't release anything for 72 years. So it doesn't matter if you are a United States citizen, it is completely confidential. And this is a way that we can make sure that our communities get the resources they need so that we can help the programs that help support needs of our community.
Okay, thank you all. So now we know that many times in communities of color, sometimes we're not comfortable with completing this information. So my question to all of you would be this: what about citizens who are not comfortable completing the census? That's the first part of the question. And then the next part is, how would you advise them on completing the census?
And can I start off with that? First off,
Sure, Jamie.
Mr. Davenport, it's not citizens, it's all persons residing in the United States, okay? So
Okay.
they don't have to be a citizen or not. But what we have is we have a lack of trust in government. We say, well, it's not going to affect me. We're not getting anything out of it. But all persons that's in our country has some type of effect due to your census, due to your population count. So it is vital. It's one thing that, and I'll be a person. I don't remember completing a census throughout my lifetime, and I'm 40 years old, 40 plus years old. But I will never do it ever again in life, and I will make sure my kids, family, and all persons that I know and don't know actually complete the census, because it is so vital for all avenues in our life. So I will recommend the people that do not trust. We need you all to trust. We need you all to count yourself and shape your future.
Thank you. Liz?
I absolutely think it's important. And I would agree with Jamie that I did not realize. I mean, I knew we would use the census for planning and statistics because I run a nonprofit. And so part of running a nonprofit, you have to look at that census data. So I knew it was used for planning, but I didn't realize how many resources, as far as financial resources, go to so many of the community programs and the families that we serve. And we cannot get that funding if people don't participate. And so I think a lot of times people are scared because of that distrust, but it's so important. It's so important to participate in the census because we want to be able to make sure that all of our families in our community are served. And the only way that we can do that is by having the funding and resources to do so.
Thank you. Krista?
It's so true what both Liz and Jamie said. They've said it so well. It's something that we all need to do. And again, if we don't do it, it will be a disservice to all of us, and we all will be seeing the consequences of that.
Absolutely.
We don't want those consequences. So I don't want to paint a doom and gloom theory here, but we just want to stress the importance of everyone realizing, and we understand that that there might be some disenfranchisement with the government, and there's questions in terms of can I complete it or not. But we want to dispel all of that right now here tonight to say that everyone should complete the census because it will affect all of us.
Yes, it is easy because it only takes 10 minutes and only 10 questions. It's safe because all your information is confidential, and it's important because it's so much funding, apportionment, planning, and everything that's going to affect you for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
Okay. So now that we've educated, we talked about statistics. I'm gonna pose this question to all of you: how can a person complete the census? So each one of you, I'm gonna start with Jamie first this time. Give me your 1 minute elevator pitch on how someone can complete the census.
You can complete the census while we're on the phone or while we're on this media, Skype or Facebook, and dial 844-330-2020. You can do it online at 2020census.gov, or you can call that number and request a paper census.
Okay. Hold on, Jamie. I believe, Krista, we have a slide that has that information, and we want to repeat it again. But since Jamie is losing his voice, Liz, before your comment, we're going to ask that you give us that information, and then give us your comment.
So just as Jamie was saying, you would want to go to 2020census.gov. You can complete it online. It really does take 10 minutes or less. I myself completed it, and it does take that short amount of time. You can call 1-844-330-2020, or you can also, as Jamie said, complete it on the paper form. But please be aware that it has to be postmarked by September 30th, and they have to receive it by October 7th. So if it's not postmarked by September 30th, it will not count. So it's that important to make sure you do it now. So I would advise, given the short amount of time we have now, to either do the online at 2020census.gov or to call at 844-330-2020. It's available in 12 languages, and there's language support for 59 languages.
I recommend everybody's on the call do it right now while you're looking at this presentation right now.
Yeah, and it's so important. It's really quick. Again, that number that's in there, I would recommend you take that number, go ahead and put that in your phone, and then text that out to 5 people you know, and just asking them, have you completed the census? If not, here's the phone number. Go ahead and take care of it right now.
Great. So, Krista, I believe we have a video next, but are there any additional or last comments that you want to kind of touch upon, or some highlights before we play the video, Krista?
No, I think that, what we talked about today was so important. We heard the statistics. We heard the reason why we should complete our census. We've got some great information in terms of how we complete the census. And I think by folks watching this short recap video, they'll be able to see it. And again, they'll be able to post and share with other people. But the big thing here is September 30th is the deadline. It's the deadline. And as Jamie and Liz have said, there are no takebacks on that. I think Jamie showed me a couple weeks ago, maybe, the funding and how much money comes into our state, because all of that is public information. And when I saw that, I was amazed. I thought, this is what's at stake. So right now, again, we are undercount. And we know that if we all pull together, and because of us understanding the importance of what this means, not only for this generation, but the next, that we're hoping that everyone who's hearing this, who's part of this virtual town hall, who will share it with others, will also stress to 5 other people or 10 other people how important this is, and that they will complete the census so that we are not undercount, that we are overcount, and we receive not only the funding, but we have the representation at the federal level. So I think we're ready for that. Yeah.
Great.
What is
Thank you,
the
guys.
2020 census? Every 10 years, the census records everyone living in this country. It's written in the Constitution and comes in a questionnaire that counts everyone who lives at your address on April 1st. The data can be used to inform funding for services like fire stations, schools, clinics, and representation that affect your community.
How will 2020 census data be used? Where there are more people, there are more needs for public services. That's why the census is used by the government to inform funding decisions each year. But that's not all. It's also used by nonprofits to inform services, by businesses to create jobs, and even by students for school projects. Understanding how the population changes helps us shape communities across the country for the better.
How does the 2020 census affect representation? There are 435 seats in the House of Representatives. These get distributed to the 50 states by population, and an accurate census response helps your state get the right amount of seats. States with smaller populations get at least one, while states with larger populations might get more.
How do I take the 2020 census? In March 2020, every address in the country will receive an invitation to complete a simple questionnaire. And there are 3 ways to respond. Number 1, do it online. Number 2, call by phone. Number 3, send it by mail. For those who don't respond, a census taker from your community will follow up and assist you.
Is my 2020 census data safe? After sending your census response, your personal information is kept safe. By law, it can't be shared with any other government agency, law enforcement, or landlord. No one. So take your 2020 census with peace of mind. Shape your future. Start here. Visit 2020census.gov.
What is the
Hey,
Thank
ladies
you,
and
Lucas,
gentlemen.
for showing that video. And I think we still have one other phone number just to remind people again what that phone number is. I'll repeat it, 1-844-330-2020, 1-844-330-2020. That was a good conversation.
I concur. It was fantastic. We educated, we discussed some things, and now it's time to act.
Yeah.
We have to, Krista. We have no choice. We have no choice. We have to do this, ladies and gentlemen. We must do this.
Mhm.
Okay. So
Yep. We're ready for the next phase?
I know the first part did really go fast, Krista. All this planning that we put into this thing with both of our committees, and then you get on and it just goes by so fast. Okay.
It does. And you know what? I want to tell people from that first one, that clip, we will also put that in the chat so that folks will have an opportunity to post and share that as well. That video that we showed, and who knows, 30 minutes, 20 minutes. I think we were only for 20 minutes with that conversation, but it's now time to move to Your Vote Matters.
Correct. So again, now we're looking at voting, the second part of this whole deal, Krista.
Mm-hmm.
So my question to you before we introduce our next panel would be, why does voting matter to you, to your family? I know with some of the discussions that we had in preparing for this, your oldest child is in a position where it's going to be her first time to vote. So kind of talk about that a little bit, Krista.
So we talked a little bit about this before we got started, but for us and my family, voting is just at the core of our democracy. It's our legacy to vote. We've had, as we all know, there are people who have fought, who have died, who have stood in lines for long lines to vote. And so it's not only about me, but it's about honoring the past, honoring that legacy, and then paying that forward to my children. And so we have a daughter who is a young adult, and this is her first election. This is the first time she will be able to vote. Now, she is familiar and she has seen this voting process, but this is really an important time for her. And so having to walk through this with her father and I, we've talked to her about voting. We've talked to her about looking at all the issues and doing her own research and educating herself. It's just a very important time. And so we're proud as parents to be able to usher this in for our daughter and support her in that. And so we're hoping that not only for her, but for all of the young adults who will be voting for their first time, that they will look at this as a sense of a rite of passage, because it was for you and I as well, Tamir. So what about you? What about you?
For me personally, Krista, it's one of those things. A lot of things that you said are true, but me being an old track guy, I kind of see it as many of my ancestors who were in slavery in Georgia. You know, they had the first leg of the 4x100. Then my mom and my dad's generation went through, you know, Jim Crow and all the segregation. They ran the second leg, and so now folks in our generation, Krista, we're running that third leg. And my thing is, I don't want us to drop the baton. I don't want us to drop the baton, lose the momentum. We've always had to fight. It was always a struggle. And the things that they passed on as far as a legacy, we want us to be able to pass it to future generations. So when they have a chance and opportunity to study the things that we've done, they can say they were present, they were active, and now that the baton is being passed to us, and we want them to break the tape and for future generations and to move on through this whole process called democracy. Because that's what it means to me in a nutshell.
Well, I actually followed your track analogy. I did. I followed that pretty well.
Right. I'm so old now, Krista, I can't run any of those races.
But I did follow it, so that was good. And hopefully that folks that are listening, they followed it as well, even if they've never run before in their life, they followed what you were saying. So thank you. And so we have an excellent panel that we're going to be talking tonight with as a part two with respect to Your Vote Matters. And so we want to introduce them. And before we do that, Tamir, I know we have some important dates that we need to tell people. So do you mind if we take a few minutes and share those dates?
Not at all, Krista, because when we look at these important dates, again, we're being informational here. We're sharing great information. So I believe we have a slide, and I believe, you know, you and I maybe together are going to talk about this, but of course, being raised the way I was, I'm going to defer to the distinguished colleague of mine from the great state of Ohio.
All right. And then I'll send it back your way. So you'll see here on the slide that we wanted to put out for you the important dates. These are as we use Tamir's markers as a reference point. October 5th is the registration deadline to register to vote. So if you have not yet registered to vote, October 5th is that deadline. And there are many ways to do that. That's why we're talking about it tonight. There'll be some things that will be placed in the chat for you so that you can go ahead and complete that registration. And then we also want to show you that absentee ballots, the in-person early voting, absentee and in-person starts October 6th. And then Tamir, do you want to tell them what that grand day is?
November 3rd. It's a culmination of November 3rd, Krista, and we want as many folks to get out and vote as possible. Hopefully some of the groups that we're working with will help people get to the polls. I know on your committee, Cleo Lucas is doing a great job in trying to get senior citizens out. And, we're even trying to get some of our younger members of the chapter to become poll workers. So again, it's going to take a collective effort to make sure that people get out and vote, Krista.
Most definitely. I think we have another slide too, Tamir, that talks about some of these additional dates. And this is actually pulled, everyone, directly from the Secretary of State's website. And you'll see there that it's color-coded. So you'll see the green that represents military overseas, the red that represents the absentee voting by mail when that begins, the dark blue, which is the early in-person voting. And then we actually have that November 3rd as Election Day. The information that we're pulling for you, again, can be found at the Secretary of State's website. It has the voting schedule. It has the registration information there. It's very easy to find. And we'll make sure that we put that in our chat as a key takeaway, that particular website, so that you can click right on that and register to vote. In fact, I know as a part of our sorority, we are partnering with When We All Vote, which also features a quick registration piece. And if you're not sure if you're registered to vote, you can also do a lookup to see if you're registered. So that's also an important piece. So this is just giving us a quick overview about registration, but we want to move into the panel because we're excited to talk with them and hear some of the great things that they're going to tell us about by way of voting and why their vote matters. So I want to introduce our panel. We have Sarah Schmidt. She is in higher ed and she's an activist as it relates to anything related to voting and knowing your rights. We also have Mysore Corey Minor Smith. She's an attorney and she also is an activist advocating for everyone. We have Lucas Tyndall, who you all have met, and he is our grand host behind the scenes, but he's going to come to the present today. He is, as you know, he does podcasts and he's an activist. And then you have another dear friend of mine, Dr. Sandy Womack. He's an educator and an activist as well. And we're just so happy to have all of our friends on this discussion tonight. All of you are friends of ours in terms of this work and this fight that we do by way of social justice. So thank you so much for being here this evening. And then we want to we'll make sure we pull up Corey's picture so that everyone's represented here. Thank you. I think I'm twice. Yeah. All right. Got it worked out. We'll figure this out. Thank you so much. So why don't we start off? Tamir, I know you had a big question that you wanted to ask. So I'll let you get started.
So at this time, like you said, a good friend of mine, Dr. Sandy Womack, I believe I've known him for almost 30 years now. Sandy, in roughly 2 minutes, Sandy, kind of give us an overview of our federal government, the 3 different branches, to kind of kick us off with this particular part of the show. Dr. Womack.
Thank you, Tamir. So the United States government is based on a system of checks and balances, which provides us with 3 branches of government. You've got the executive branch of government, which is your president, your governor, and your mayor, and they're responsible for enforcing the laws, i.e. the police department, the National Guard, as well as the armed services. Then you have the legislative branch of government, which is your city council, which is your House of Representatives, which is your state representatives, which is also your Senate, as well as representatives at the federal level. And they are responsible for designing the laws. Then you have the judicial branch of government, and that judicial branch of government is responsible for interpreting the law. So when you vote, you have an access to impacting all 3 branches of those governments. And to give you an example of what that actually looks like is this. Slavery was legal in the United States of America. President Lincoln started with the Emancipation Proclamation, but it was actually the 13th Amendment of the Constitution, which was legislation which ended slavery, which took place in 1865. Another example of how this works is that separate and equal, separate was listed as unequal by 1896 with Plessy versus Ferguson. But in 1954, the Supreme Court, who has the ability to interpret the law, made a decision with Brown versus Board of Education, which overturned separate and unequal, which was Plessy versus Ferguson. So all 3 branches of those government makes it possible for us as U.S. citizens to have a system of checks and balances. So when you vote, you find yourself in a situation where you can impact all 3 branches of government. This is not just Trump versus Biden. This is legislators at the House and at the Senate. This is city council. This is judicial appointments in regards to what goes on. And by having that system of checks and balances, we as a country are able to keep any branch from having too much power, which is another reason why it's important for us to vote, and also tying that back into the U.S. Census, because our electoral college votes are impacted by our representatives, which also impact what goes on with the U.S. Census by counting the number of people who are in our state of Ohio. So that is a 2-minute brief summary of our 3 branches of government and what takes place with the executive, judicial, and legislative branches of government.
You know
Thank
what?
you, Dr. Womack.
Dr. Womack, I'm giving you high fives. That was great. I wasn't, we said 2 minutes and you did this in 2 minutes. Thank you for giving that piece, because a lot of us learned that probably when we were in high school, right? We may have talked about that in high school and it was a really short segment, but being able to bring that back to set the stage for the conversation this evening is so important. And so we want to kick this off with an additional question to all of you as panelists this evening. We know that from what Dr. Womack talked about, which was the foundation of our democracy and why our vote matters, But one of the things that always trips us up, and it trips everyone up when we think about voting, and I shared with you that personal story about my daughter that this is the first time that she will be voting, is the what, the where, and the when, and the how. Those are important questions. And just like when we plan our grocery store list, or we say we want to make a cake and we need to get all the ingredients, we create a plan for that. But I don't think we always think about creating a plan for voting. So if someone within the community walked up to you and they said, what is your plan to vote, or how should I do this? How would you advise them about the what, the where, and the how? And so I'm seeing some heads shaking, and I'm going to go in the same order that we introduced you so that it'll give everyone time. So Sarah, can you share with us how you would respond to that?
Absolutely. Thank you, Krista. And thank you, Dr. Womack, for your refresher of our checks and balances. You gave us the why, and that why is so very important. In terms of the how and the where, there's a few very specific things I make sure I check in the run-up to every election, whether that is a major year like a presidential year or for midterms. And so the first thing that I do is I check my registration. I've moved around a lot in my life. I've moved states. I've moved different residential locations. And so the first thing I do is check my registration to make sure that I am registered, that nothing has happened and I've been purged, because we know these sorts of things happen. And so that's number one, is to make sure that I'm registered. Step number two that I try to do is to look up a sample ballot. It can be really confusing, and you hear everyone talk about being an informed voter, and that's so true. It's important to read up on the folks that we're voting on, but it's always been a little confusing for me on where to start. You see the political signs, and you just don't really know where to begin. And so for me, I look up my sample ballot. I know exactly what's going to be on the ballot that day. And that's where I can start with. And then there's just a wealth of resources out there that are available to us online. And so your sample ballot can be found at the Ohio Secretary of State. I actually looked mine up today. It's really easy. You plug in your information, your address, your name, and it pulls right up for you. So you can see your sample ballot there at the Ohio Secretary of State. And I'll just end with I plan on voting in person. There's just something about having that visceral experience of voting. I have some concerns about mail-in voting with the things that are going on with the Postal Service and the repression of our Postal Service and those services. So I'm going to do early in person. So I'm going to mask up and march myself down to the polls. And I'm taking my 5-year-old. This is a kind of a rite of passage for us. She's voted with me every year. So I'm gonna pull my 5-year-old along, because the education starts now. She's going to grow up learning that this is her responsibility to make sure that our democracy functions in a healthy way. And the way that we do that is to make sure that our voice is heard. And so that's my plan.
All right. Thank you, Sarah. You're right. It is her responsibility. So she's able to see that. So that is awesome. She'll get a sticker too.
They always give her an extra sticker.
Yeah, that's devoted. Yes. So, Corey, what about you? What would you share with a community member that came up to you about the what, the where, and the how? What would be your plan?
Really, I would take the responses of both you and Sarah and merge them, because essentially that is my plan and my purpose for voting. As far as making a plan and planning it out, when my son was younger, he's now 17, I always took him with me on the way to dropping him off to daycare and then to school and things like that, so he can learn the process as he grew up. And so as far as the plan, I like to look at materials to read about each candidate, to read about each issue that may be present. It's important for us to, even if we're registered as a particular party or not, it's important for us to understand the voting history of the individuals that we are voting for, as well as what they stand for. What kinds of decisions have they previously made? What type of work do they do currently, and how have they engaged in their work product, especially if they're making decisions? We see the importance of that now for those who are being appointed to the federal bench, because those are lifetime positions, and individuals are being appointed to those positions at a very young age, meaning that they will be there for 20, 30, 40, maybe 50 years. And so the decisions that they make are going to impact generations, not just us currently, but our children and our children's children. So it's important for us to do the research on the candidates. Not necessarily, it's not always the same party as you. You really have to do the research if you want to be an informed voter and make an informed decision when you go in there to vote on election day.
That's so true, because sometimes you hear people say, well, I'm just going to vote how my parents voted or how my cousin voted, and they don't necessarily take the time to do their own individual research. So that is a key takeaway that hopefully we'll capture in the chat. That key takeaway is about doing your research. So Lucas, what about you? What would you tell someone?
Well, thank you, Krista and Tamir. You guys have been amazing, and it's been an honor hosting this on my platform, moving things around in the background, and it looks like we're going great, and you guys are doing wonderful. And to the rest of our panel and to our panelists earlier who are phenomenal, again, it's an honor to host this and have you guys here today. When I think about it, I think about planning starting in being informed, as others were talking about. And I really think we live in a day and age where we no longer, or it's harder to find news and truth. It's easy to find opinion. So I try to first inform myself by not trying to take others' opinions, but try to get to the facts and make my own opinion. Because if you don't know what you're doing before you get to the polls, it's like taking a test that you haven't studied for. And it's too important of a test to not be informed. So first things first is, what are my views? What are my opinions? My personal belief is there's some things I'm conservative on, there's some things I'm liberal on. So I can't go in here and just say, well, I'm all one way or the other. I need to really think about what's true to me, my values, my family, my faith, and go make informed decisions based on facts and truth. So informing myself, learning about candidates, really trying to take in everything I can about those that are running not only for the highest office, obviously as president, but looking at the other candidates and who's running for what in my county. I moved a few years ago. I moved from Canton City to North Canton, Ohio. Going to Dr. Womack, don't do that. You live here too. Going to my polling location, first of all, I had to prepare myself. I had to make sure I knew where it was. My wife and I vote together. We go in there together. We will once again walk arm in arm as a power couple powered by God. We have to empower ourselves to vote. Trusting in God and trust is great. But if we don't vote and operate in these systems that are set up in our country, my faith in God can't be functional if I don't follow the functional systems. And in my faith, that's biblical. So I have an obligation to do so, and I take it very seriously. I remember when my wife and I were dating, and we had different polling locations because we lived separately. And I remember taking her to her polling location, and the line for her polling location was wrapped around the world. And I said, "I'll be back." No, I didn't. I don't think I left her, but I think I maybe brought her some water. Got her some. I don't know. I supported her in exercising her right. So together we will once again walk arm in arm, and then again reiterating what everyone else said. So I think everyone else already hit on it, but just one other point that I really focus on is also in all that we say and do on social media, in all the posts and all the thoughts and all the arguments and all the love we share, I make sure we take a picture together with our sticker that says we voted, because someone else out there may be thinking, I'm too busy, I can't get off work, I can't whatever. Again, that's why you have to make a plan. Know your company's policies and know your rights to vote. If you got to go early, if you got to go a little bit later, know when your polling locations close, or do early voting or mail-in voting, but don't be stuck in the middle saying I'm stuck in traffic, things didn't work out. So again, as you said, if somebody were to ask that, I can tell you my plan, but I'd also say really take time, get informed, and think through your own plan.
Thank you, Lucas. And that's really important, because you walk through that step by step. And I love the fact that you said that you've been going, you and your wife go hand in hand, and you go to vote together. That's something that my husband and I do as well. And it's important. And I knew you wouldn't leave her there. So
I know.
So yeah, that's a no-no. No. But one of the other things, though, is that we're in the age of COVID right now. And so we know that people are concerned about that. So the notion of practicing that social distancing and having that mask on, especially if you're saying, I've always gone in to vote. I still want to go in to vote. Just make sure that you're safe and that you have that mask with you as well. And so, Dr. Womack, you've heard some comments there, but I know you're going to bring us home on this. What would be the plan that you would tell someone that walked up to you in the community?
Well, I know I'm not going to follow the instructions of number 45, who said to take the mail-in ballot and then show up in person and vote twice, so my vote does not count. That's what I know for certain that I won't be doing. Uh, so, I am using the mail-in ballot because I reside in Columbus right now because of school and where I'm working at. And so I'll be using the mail-in ballot in order to vote this year. In past, I've always shown up at the polls in order to take care of that. And I'm hoping that there's a system of checks and balances to ensure that each and every mailed-in ballot counts. And that will be my attempt this year in order to make sure that takes place. But I think there's a right and a wrong way to do anything. And ultimately, I'm going to try to do it the right way. And as I said before, we're not following the direction of 45, who said use the mail-in ballot and show up in person. That will not work. And I also think that you cannot win a race that you are not in. So it's imperative that we find a way to make sure that our vote counts, because the first way to make sure it doesn't count is not to vote. And too many people fought and died. Medgar Evers, John Lewis fought and was beaten on the march to Selma, to Montgomery, at the Edwin Pettus Bridge in order to make this possible. Folks, that was just 1965. I was born in 1969. So Fannie Lou Hamer and all of those individuals who died and fought for us to have this right, I think it's imperative that we find a way to get out and make our vote count.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I knew you with that. That's so powerful because you're right. Too many people have fought and died.
Absolutely.
Too many people. And so our vote matters. And, you all have provided just such a great wealth of knowledge in terms of what you do, but hopefully that'll give folks an insight of what they can do. So they'll just take some of the things that you said and they'll apply it to themselves, even if it's taking the picture, if it's going in early, if it's bringing their children, whatever that looks like. So thank you for sharing that with us. Tamir, I'll turn it over to you now because I know you got some other questions.
I do. And my first question, Krista, is surrounded panel by what we like to call voter registration 101. So at this time, as I told the other panelists, your 60-second elevator pitch of why. We'll go in the same order. Sarah, your 60-second pitch on why vote.
I think Dr. Womack laid it out for us, but just to reiterate a few things, this is the way that our democracy functions in a healthy way. In order for this design of government to work, we have to express our voice. This is the whole purpose in a democracy, is to be part of the decisions that are made of the people that represent us. And for myself, working in higher education, I work with a lot of young people. That's my primary audience. And when we look to the 2016 election, and we look at historical elections, this is it's a low turnout with this group of young people. And so, if I can speak to the young people for just a minute, your voice is as crucial as any of the rest of them, right? And in 2016, less than half of 18 to 29-year-olds voted. It's about 46% of 18 to 29-year-olds. And so it's just so important to make sure that you are heard. And I've been seeing you guys in the streets. I've been in the streets myself. We're in the middle of what's being called the largest social movement in history. And so let's take that motivation from the streets and march ourselves to the polls and make sure that the changes that we're demanding of our representatives are truly reflected in the people that we elect into these offices. And with the passing of Supreme Court Justice Ginsburg, rest in power, it's more than just the presidential election, as Dr. Womack told us, right? It's our judges, it's our legislators, and of course, it's the presidential race. But there's a lot riding on this one. And so for everyone, get out and vote, but especially that young crowd, because I see you and I hear you and I'm with you in the streets. And now let's get ourselves to the polls and make it count.
Absolutely.
Corey, you're what?
Yes, again, a merger of everything that we've heard tonight. But I vote because my ancestors could not. I vote because those who suffered, bled, and died could not. I vote because I have the right to vote. And more importantly, I have the influence over young people who want to vote and understand the importance of it. And when we step forward and are examples in our community and showing the significance of voting and the history of the suppression in this country, our younger generations will see the importance for them to stand up and vote as well. I appreciate, like Krista said, with her daughter being able to vote for the first time. I remember my now 24-year-old being able to vote for the first time, and he was able to vote for his mother. So I was trying to be extra good so he would vote for me that day because I was on the ballot. But he was in a position where he was able to register to vote because he was 17 but would turn 18 before election day. Unfortunately, his younger brother, who is now 17, will just miss the mark. He turns 18 on November 5th. So 2 days, but he understands the importance of voting. And I told him to make a pinky promise with me that he would register as soon as he can and be ready for the next time that he's able to vote for his first time.
All right.
Wonderful. Lucas, your why. 60 seconds.
60 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay. My why is, as Corey said, I have the right to vote, and it is the right thing to do to vote. I have an opinion. I think justice needs to be served. I think things need to change. I have my list of complaints, but I can't have my list of complaints if I don't have my list of solutions. And voting is a part of the solution. So who am I to voice disdain for a system that I'm not active in? It's like being upset about a school district that my kids aren't in. I could be upset, but if I'm not an active voice or in my own local community, what are words? What is Twitter? What is Facebook? What are those places? That is not where my voice is best heard. While there may be hundreds or thousands of likes and love and comments, those things come and go. Again, these Supreme Court justices and these other justices that are placed around the country that are appointees often with these lifetime appointments. Well, those people are put in positions by those we put in position. So we need to be conscious of those things. So if I want justice, if I want change, I can sit, be sad and cry, or I could stand up and do what my forefathers, my ancestors, no, my parents, my grandparents. It wasn't that long ago that they were in danger standing at the polling location. And just at the off chance that this year, unlike years in the past, I'm in danger standing at my polling location, I'm going to go stand proudly and understand that my parents and grandparents once did this, and I will do whatever I need to do to make sure that my voice counts.
Dr. Womack, your 60 seconds of why.
I vote because Carl Stokes was the first Black mayor elected to a major city in 1968. And today in 2012, we actually have over 9,000 elected Black officials. And if we don't have a seat at the table, we often end up on the plate. The only way I can ensure that we have representation from people who are looking like me and who are looking for the same interests that I have is to ensure that I vote to impact all three branches of that government. So that is the number one reason that I vote, because I want us to have a seat at the table, because if not, you often end up on the plate. And if you think about Carl Stokes was elected as the first Black mayor of a major city in 1968, and today we have over 9,000 elected African-American officials, it's imperative that my vote counts. A disenfranchised people has no voice. And I want us to have a voice, and I want my kids to know that their votes count as well. So I have to model what I expect for them.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Krista, I'll turn it back over to you because I think we have some powerful images maybe to show up here pretty soon, but I'll turn it over to you first.
Yeah, thank you. Lucas, if you could put those up there. I know that there's so many great takeaways, and we wanted to just put this image up in front for all of you to see. We'll just take a moment to let you look at this. John Lewis states, "The right to vote is the most powerful nonviolent tool we have in a democracy. I risked my life defending that right." So we have the tools, ladies and gentlemen. We have the tools. We just need to use them. Lucas, do you mind if we bring back all of our panelists from this evening's conversation? Oh, wonderful. We need everybody back. We need to add, yeah. And then I know that we have some questions that probably have been coming in. So we want to make sure that we capture those questions or those comments. And so, Lucas, I know we're going to be putting you on double time here, but we want to field some of these questions. And we just want to thank everyone for staying with us because this is the part where you've been typing in comments, you've been typing in questions. And as we said originally, we may not be able to get to all of those questions this evening, but we want to try to get to some of them. You may see some key takeaways in there. We're asking that you share those out with others. And so we're going to take some of those comments. And I think, Lucas, we just need to squeeze maybe that top one in so that we can get everybody there. All right. Perfect. We are all back. It's so good to see all of you. I know that, Tamir, I'm going to extend this out for you and I at the same time. We just want to thank all of you for this evening. And so, Lucas, just let us know when you're ready and we will start taking some questions.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you have not put a question in the comments, we'd love to see some questions. I do see a couple, but we'd love to see some more. Even if you believe that you know the answer, but you think it's an important question to be asked for this panel, please go ahead and throw your questions in the comments. Again, if we can get to it today, we will, or we will look to do other follow-up town halls like this. So I did see a question earlier. Someone asked, and I think this question was answered, but I think it's important to answer it again. Maybe somebody tuned in a little late. They said, why is the census important? Why should they do their census? This was during the census discussion. They said, why is it important? So I know we have some experts here who are answering that. Maybe you could do that again for us.
So Jamie, I'll go ahead and take this one if that's okay, or if you want to piggyback off when I'm done too. The census is important because all the programs that serve our community are funded by it. I don't know if people realize it, but foster care is funded by the census. All of our foster care programs, that's where their funding comes from. These kids have to be cared for. These kids' needs need to be met, and they can't be met without funding. Our highway, transportation, bus routes, city planning, business planning, nonprofit planning, all kinds of development, all that funding comes from the census. Our free and reduced lunch program for kids don't get to have that program without funding from the census. Early childhood education, which is something that I'm passionate about through running the Spark program in Alliance and Sebring. That early childhood education piece for Head Start, early Head Start, that funding comes from the census. Education, Title I funding, special education funding, that all comes from the census. The children's food program, SNAP, WIC, HEAP, energy assistance for seniors, Medicare, Medicaid, making sure people have their health needs met, which is so important, especially, and that's something I have to highlight here because my daughter has autoimmune problems. The ACA is something that's important with this election as well. And I just have to say that this election matters. The census matters because people's health matters. And you have a say in this. Housing, it's funded by the census. $1,814 approximately per person just by participating in the census goes to all of these programs. And if someone says, I don't use these programs, well, that's not true because our roads, the funding for all of that comes from the census. A family of four can give approximately $7,256 to their community without a dime out of their pocket and less than 10 minutes of their time just by completing the census.
All right, and I will piggyback on that, Liz. As I tell people, people say it's important to vote so you can select your representation. Count yourself in the census meaning you're a representative. And I'm going to end it like that.
Do we have any other questions or are there comments, Lucas?
The comments were people were very excited about the information, a lot of love and appreciation, the importance of getting informed. I think people were saying. Also, someone mentioned looking at the ballots in advance, getting a copy of the ballot. I believe Sarah may have said that. Someone in the comments said that's very important, and I know that is someone who is works the polls and is very familiar with that process. So those are really important things. Sample ballots are everything. Ebony Akron made that comment here. There were a few other questions here. Pastor Hubert Carpenter here asked a question about the Electoral College. I believe Dr. Womack started to answer that. I'm not sure. Krista, Tamir, you guys can decide. But who would answer a question about, he said, please explain the Electoral College.
Dr. Womack, would you like to start us? And then maybe Sarah, you can piggyback.
Yeah, I can. So the Electoral College, so there's a popular vote and there's an Electoral College that goes along with the number of representatives that you have. And so when we vote a popular vote. But the Electoral College are actually the people who determine who the president is based on the number of Electoral College votes that you have in those states that the president wins. So you might win California, you may win Ohio, you may win some of the other states, but it depends on the number of Electoral College votes that are actually at the state level. A lot of that goes along with the United States Census, and that would be a start on it.
Excellent.
So only thing I'll add to that is that Ohio is an important state in the Electoral College, and so if most of our audience are Ohioans right now, your vote is really essential. So we're one of those battleground states that are really important. So it makes that vote you're casting all that more powerful.
And I think as we get closer to the elections, we will see, if you're watching news, they'll say Ohio is a battleground state. In every election, from the time that I can remember watching this, even with my parents, I would always see Ohio as that key state. So that's important for us to remember, that we have a lot of power within this state, and we need to exercise that and make sure that we're not only registered to vote, but that we actually vote. So those two different things, because there are people who register but don't actually vote. So register and then also vote.
All right, excellent. Do we want to do another question?
You guys got time?
I got time.
You got time. Not you, everybody else.
Oh.
You guys got a couple more minutes for us? Okay.
They're still here.
All right, yes.
They're smiling. Okay. Question here, Dawn Pullen, I believe we all know her. She a phenomenal woman over the Phenomenal Woman organization. And Pastor Hubert Carpenter said thank you for the answer there as well. Dawn Pullen says, can we complete the census online? I'm sure somebody else is wondering that, and it may have been stated earlier. Can we complete the census online?
Jamie, you want to take that one?
Or you can take it.
So absolutely, it can be completed online. You just want to go to 2020census.gov. It is available to be done in 12 languages, and there's language support for 59 languages. But yes, it can be done online. Just go to 2020census.gov.
And there's the phone number as well, 1-844-330-2020. Liz and Jamie, if they call the number, does that also have language support as well?
Yes.
Yes. Perfect.
Okay,
So in case you don't have access to a computer or a laptop, or you're not able to do it on your phone because of Wi-Fi, but you can call out, just call that number, and it only takes less than 7 minutes to do that.
Dawn asked a follow-up question, which I think is really important because people may get these confused. She then asked, can you vote online or by phone? I'm just asking the questions.
Just mail in only.
Yeah.
Mail in only.
Mail in.
Not only the mail in, but I mean not online or by the phone.
Right.
Yeah.
I think we have a slide too for that gives I thought we had a slide that maybe that we could show for folks. If so, we'll put that up there. You have any other comments? Oh, yes. Thank you for showing this, Lucas. This is an important piece. And so if any of our panelists want to comment on this, this is the election protection phone number, but we also put the dates here as well Just as another reminder for folks, October 5th is the deadline for voter registration. October 31st, noon deadline to request your absentee ballot. So if you were going to be voting by absentee ballot, the noon deadline applies October 31st. November 2nd, you have to have that completed absentee ballot by mail, must be postmarked by November 2nd, so that you have to have that in the mail. I know some have indicated they're just going to walk it in. And then obviously November 3rd is obviously our actual day to vote, but that is the deadline to return completed absentee ballots in person by 7:30. We put a note on here for everyone that polls open from 6:30 and they close at 7:30. But again, just like our panelists have shared this evening, have your plan in place. You may want to go ahead and contact your Board of Election. You may want to drive down and just observe and kind of get familiar with the lay of the land and how it's set up so that you're prepared on that day, November 3rd. The election protection phone number is also listed for you, and we provided that number and that information in case you have additional questions about voting. For those that are listening that are outside of Ohio, this particular number is represented, and it's got information for all the different states as well. Any questions, or are there any comments from our panelists with respect to election protection and voter protection?
Krista, I would like to make a quick statement. The gentleman who asked about the Electoral College, if he goes to eac.gov, it will talk about the 538 Electoral College votes, as well as explaining why you need the 270 in order to win the presidency. It also will break down the number of Electoral College votes that we have in each state. For example, in 2012, Ohio had 18. Now, if our census numbers drop and we don't have as many representatives, our Electoral College votes may drop as well. A state like New York, for example, has 29 Electoral College votes. So the president, if you need to have 270 Electoral College votes, it's imperative that you win those states that have the most Electoral College votes. And that's based on population and representation. So I would recommend they go to eac.gov, because many people get confused. Well, you had the most votes. Did you have the most votes in the states with the highest number of Electoral College votes? And that would be a good way for them to find that information. Thank you.
No, thank you so much,
Great
Dr.
information. Great information.
Yeah, that is awesome. Thank you for putting that up there too, Lucas, for everyone to know that. And I know Tamir and I both appreciate the fact that you were able to connect that back to our first conversation as related to the census as well. So all of these things, it's not a coincidence that we're talking about census and the election at the same time and voting. These pieces are very much connected. So thank you so much. Any other comments? We're going to do a go around from all of our panelists from what we've shared and talked about this evening to get your final feedback, your 30-second comment that you would tell everyone by way of whether it's census or by way of voting. What would you share, or just any comments from this evening overall?
How about Jamie? You kick this off.
If I still have a voice, but I just think it's imperative that we we vote and we complete our census. Our people have fought for this throughout history. It's very imperative. We need to educate ourselves, educate our families, educate our friends, and educate people that you're just out on the street walking past. So we need to make sure, because it's imperative for the next years, and we want to make sure that we exercise our right to vote and count and shape your future. So thank you all. It's been a pleasure. Anytime you all need something like that just done, please let me know, and we're going to continue to do this.
Liz, you have
So I just want to make sure that people are aware that this Saturday from 1 to 5, the Early Childhood Education Alliance, we're collaborating with Councilwoman Sheila Cherry, and we're going to be over in Alliance at the Elks Lodge 1417. It's located at the corner of 735 Ash Street in Alliance. And we're going to be there from 1 to 5. We're going to have census workers there to help people through the census if they need any support. And then we're also obviously going to be following the social distancing rules and guidelines. We'll have masks and all of that. But in addition to that, we also have separately a group that's going to be doing voter registration. So if anyone is not registered to vote or has not completed their census yet, we will be there this Saturday at the Elks Lodge in Alliant from 1 to 5, and we will be more than happy to help you. So please let your voice be heard.
Corey, you're next.
Yes, I have to say this quote by Malcolm X was just very touching for me today. And I believe it sheds the importance on knowing who you are voting for. And that quote is, the most disrespected person in America is the Black woman. The most unprotected person in America is the Black woman. And the most neglected person in America is the Black woman. And I say that in honor of Breonna Taylor and all other Black women who have been killed, and there have not been justice for them and their deaths and for their families. It is important to understand that people who are making these decisions, who gets charged and who does not, for murder, are elected. Attorney generals are elected. Many judges are elected. And it's important for us to understand and know their voting history, their decision history, and how it impacts our country and our local communities. And even though Breonna Taylor was not here in Ohio, she has had a national and even global, I would dare say, impact on how we look at our government, how decisions are made, and how justice can sometimes not occur. So I would just wanted to close with sharing that quote and for us to understand and know the power of our vote. And if it wasn't important, if it was not valuable, then there would not be so many efforts to suppress it. So please, let's continue to join out in our communities and to help individuals to get registered and to actually take that second step to actually vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Womack, sir.
I just want to thank the young lady for going to the Elks and Alliance in order to register the citizens of Alliance to vote. I spend a lot of time in Alliance, and I hope you enjoy yourself at the Elks. I'm certain you have a very unique crowd there, but ultimately I'm hoping that they come out in order to show their support. I'd also like to piggyback on what Corey said in regards to Breonna Taylor. You know, it's a sad day when we can give money for somebody's life, but we still can't make people accountable for what they did. And somewhere along the way, in fact, with census and voting, we have to find a way to impact people, not only with policy and politics, but also in their pocket. Because, that was just, very, very, I'm at a loss of words. But that was devastating today to see what happened. So thank you to everybody on the panel today. Continue to fight for what is right, voting included, census included, but most importantly, we got to wake up, stand up, and clean up in order to try to make this better. This is a lot of changes. So to everybody that was here today, thank you very much. And hopefully we can equip our students and this kids for this future generation in order to make some phenomenal changes, because we can't keep on letting this happen. We just can't keep on letting this happen.
Thank you, Dr. Womack. Sarah, your last comment.
I'll just concur with everything that's been said. This is really when it counts. So get that census filled out so we can get the services in our communities where it's needed. And let's march ourselves down to the polls. All of my young people out there, let's show up in more than 46% this time around. Let's have our voices heard. We're marching. Let's get to the polls. Let's march our voices down to the polls now.
Lucas.
Again, I want to thank you guys for the collaboration here today with Lucas Live and Lucas Live Media. This whole show and everything that I've built was dedicated to my mother, who passed away on March 26th of this year as a result of breast cancer. And my life has been very challenging, but one thing my mom was an activist. As she grew up, she said she was at every march, she was at every protest, she was involved. She was a very fair-skinned woman with green eyes, too white to be black, too black to be white, somewhere in the middle, but willing to fight and push things forward. So I just want to honor her memory today, and she knows that me and my siblings and my family are going to continue that fight. We have more to do. Before she passed away, she said she didn't want to go because she felt she had more to do, and sadly she still passed away, but I will carry that torch. And I will forever have more to do. So I will be voting. I have already completed my census, and I'll continue to work to see the change that we all want to see. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Tamir, this went really fast this evening. Yeah, I think we could talk more about this. There's so many other issues and comments that we could really dig into. But I know you have some final comments, and then I'll share mine.
Right. Just what I really would love to do is we want to thank our social action chair, Brother Sean Strong, also the bosses of the Capitol chapter, Brother Casey Smith. They were instrumental in helping put this together. We also have a group of new brothers in our chapter. They've been on the calls. They've been on other calls. We also put it out to our district. Capitol happens to be in the 4th district, which comprises of the states of Ohio and West Virginia. We want to thank our DR, our district representative, the 29th duly elected representative, Lamar Cole, because in our district, we're trying to make sure that these things happen throughout the great states of Ohio, West Virginia. We want to thank all the other brothers from our chapter and from our fraternity around the world, trying to make sure that we are uplifting our communities as we serve. So, Krista, again, I've enjoyed working with you, whether it's with the Kansas City School District or when we do the Black College Classic that comes here annually every time. Krista, it's a blast. I love working with you. So, give your final comments as well.
Tamir, it's been great working with you. As always, you took me back a ways with some of our prior work, but this was great this evening. And I just want to thank all of the panelists tonight for your authenticity, your energy, and your drive in stressing the importance of why the census matters, why voting matters. I also want to thank our chapter, Stark County Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, all of our SOARs that are on, our social action chair, our social action committee that's been working on this. I want to thank also our brothers here that are part of this work. This is just an amazing work, and this is a timely conversation. I was sharing with my daughter today that we were doing this, and I said, I need you to watch this. So that was the first thing. I need you to watch this and show your friends in school to watch this, because this is a timely conversation. So thank you for taking the time out of your evening to have this conversation, not only with us, but those that are watching. And for those that are watching, thank you for your comments. Thank you for your questions. Please share this with others. I will say it again. Please share this with others. We know that the most powerful statement and the response comes from you. Your count matters. Your vote matters. Your count matters. Your vote matters. And so we just want to thank you again for being with us this evening. Please share this with others. Look for future collaborations. We're hoping that we can do this all again. We've already told the panel to be on standby. And we want to tell you to be on standby as well, because we want to continue this dialogue, because it just doesn't stop here, folks. Yes, we have a census. Yes, we have an election. But then what comes after that? We still must continue to advocate. We still must continue to speak out. We cannot be silent. Silence is not an option. So on behalf of all of us that have joined together through this collaboration, we want to thank you again for joining us for our first of many virtual town halls. Have a wonderful evening and be blessed.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.